What's up guys, it's your friendly neighborhood web war fanatic, and today we're looking at all the Justice events in Marvel Champions. So let's go ahead and get started here with our first event. This is Agile Flight, a 3-cost event. Play only if your identity has the aerial trait, so we will evaluate this card as if we're playing with an aerial character. Hero action thwart, remove a total of up to 5 threat among schemes in play as you choose. So that's kind of cool because if there's like a side scheme with 3 threat, you can take 3 off of that side scheme and then remove 2 threat off the main scheme as well. For 3 costs, I think it's a little bit expensive to be doing 5 threat removal. I'm gonna put this card like 2 for 4. I think it's much better. Right now I put it in the B tier, right? I think you're playing a Justice hero, or if you're playing Injustice and you're playing an aerial hero, I think if there's an empty rush spot in the deck, I wouldn't mind putting the Agile Flight in just because it's so versatile. Because you can remove a total of 5 threat amongst different schemes, right? It doesn't have to be all from one scheme. So that's a pretty unique effect. I'll put it in B tier for now, but I may drop it down to C tier just because I think the 3 cost is a little bit pricey. Next we have Brains over Brawn. It's a 2-cost event. Hero response attack. After your hero makes a basic thwart, do damage to an enemy equal to your hero's thwart. So you have to make a basic thwart, right? So you have to exhaust your hero to make a basic thwart, and then play this card as a response. It's a 2-cost event, and you can do damage to any enemy equal to your hero's thwart. But this isn't attack activation because it has that attack keyword, so it does not bypass guard, it does not bypass retaliate. So a little bit unfortunate, and 2 costs for that. I mean, if you can build up your hero's thwart to like, I would say at least 5 damage, that would make this card like okay. But I mean, you really need even more than that, and it's definitely not impossible to do to build your hero's thwart to like having 5 thwart in a turn. But I think that it's pretty difficult to do that, even though it's not impossible. So I'm gonna put this card in the D tier. I actually can't really see a situation where this card would be good. And C tier is for cards I think have a situational use. But Brains over Brawn, I mean, I don't think there's any way for this to be efficient. I mean, and even if there is, you have to make a basic thwart first. So there's so many limitations on this card. I think there's definitely a better way to do damage, even in Justice here. So this card, I think, sees no play from me. If there's anything I'm missing, definitely let me know down in the comments. But this is a terrible event in my opinion. Next we have Breaking and Entering, a 2-cost event. Play only if your identity has a Spy or a Thief trait, so we will evaluate this card as if we're playing with a Spy or Thief character. Action thwart, remove 3 threat from a scheme. So this is really cool because a lot of Spies and Thieves have that in their alter ego. So you can play this card to make a thwart action in your alter ego, and it's not a hero action, so you can play this in alter ego or hero form. So just a basic 2 for 3, and I guess a big plus to this is being able to play in your alter ego. Not the biggest thing because I feel like there's so many other ways to remove threat in alter ego, like with allies, for example. 2 for 3 is not very efficient. Is it C tier or is it even not even there? I'm gonna put this card in D tier as well, and I'm a little bit, yeah. So I think it's better than Brains over Brawn, but I mean, there's no advantage really to having that Spire Thief trait. A 2-cost event to remove 3 threat. I mean, the only advantage would be that you can do it in alter ego, but there's so many ways to remove threat in alter ego. Like, I mean, there could be something I'm missing with this card where you want your identity to be the one removing threat, right? A situation like that, that could be good, but even then, I don't think, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna put this card in D tier as well. I don't think this card is like any good. I can't really see any situation where it can be decent. So yeah, a little bit surprising. And once again, if there's anything I'm missing with this card, definitely let me know because I may not be seeing everything about it. Next, we have Clear the Area. 1-cost event, hero action, thwart, remove 2 threat from a scheme. If this removes the last threat on that scheme, draw 1 card. So Clear Your Area I know is a huge fan favorite to a lot of people. I think I'll put in a B tier here, definitely above the Agile Flight. If there is an empty roster spot in my deck, I would not mind putting Clear the Area in. But I don't think it's an A tier card. I mean, it's 1 cost, and then you can potentially draw a card back, so it can potentially be just a free 2 threat removal, but you have to play this card anyway, so it still is 1 effective cost no matter what you do. And I mean, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. I mean, 2 threat, I don't think is that impactful. I mean, obviously in solo it becomes more impactful because each threat, the threat counts is a little bit lower. But even then, I mean, I don't really, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this card. I just feel like there's more consistent ways to remove threat because you need to draw this card whenever there's 2 threat less on a scheme, or if there's a way for you to get the scheme down to very low, and then you need to get that card draw for this card to be good, right? If you're just doing one cost for well, it's gonna be two effective resources, right? Because you play the card and then pay one cost for it. For two threat, that is very, very bad. So you need to get this card draw for this card to be good. And I just feel like it's just a little bit lackluster in power for my taste. But I know that this is a fan favorite for a lot of people. So definitely let me know like reasons why you think this card might be higher. If you think it's higher, and if you agree with me, definitely let me know as well. Next we have Concussive Blow, a 3-cost event. Hero action attack, confuse an enemy. If you pay for this card using a physical resource, do 3 damage to that enemy. So Concussive Blow, I think it's pretty decent to get a confuse off. Definitely a B tier level card. Um, I'm not the biggest fan of confuse and stuns, but I think there's definitely a situation for it. It's a hero action attack. So it's an attack event for anything that you would need that for. Yeah, the 3 damage doesn't matter that much, but getting that confuse off and you can flip down immediately right after, and the villain won't scheme, I think is pretty useful to kind of get that kind of on demand, right? Just whenever you have this card in your hand, you can just play it. You don't need the physical resources to get the confuse. It's just to do the 3 damage, which is definitely better. I don't think it's as good as Clear the Area. And as for Agile Flight, I think it's a little bit better than Agile Flight, so I'll put it here in the B tier. Next we have Crisis Averted, 3-cost event. Hero action Thwart removes 6 threat from the main scheme. If you pay for this card using a mental resource, this Thwart ignores the Crisis icon. So I think this card is better in multiplayer, right? Because 6 Thwart is a huge chunk of Thwart. And a lot of times in solo, a lot of main schemes don't even go up to 6 threat for solo. So I mean, this is going to be overkill. 3 cost is very expensive. 6 Thwart is good. This card to me is similar to Agile Flight, but Agile Flight's nice because you can remove from different schemes in play, right? Crisis Averted, you really can't. Is this a C tier level card? I'm not sure. 6 threat. I mean, situation, yeah, I think it's just hard to justify because of its 6 threat. So I'm not sure here. 6 threat from the main, yeah, 6 threat is just a little bit too much. I would prefer something to be cheaper and a little bit less threat. I think would be good. And then ignoring the crisis icon, I mean, usually I want to get rid of the crisis icon anyway, so it's not that big a deal to ignore it. I'm not the biggest fan of stuff that ignores the crisis icon. And it's a pretty easy effect to get to with the mental resource, but yeah, I prefer to just clear off the crisis icon because most of the time it is a side scheme and it might have something like a detrimental effect as well. So not my favorite card, but I think in the correct situation, it can be very valuable if for whatever reason you cannot clear off that crisis icon, or if you have a huge chunk of that you want to remove, this can be good. And in multiplayer, I mean, it's more useful as well. Next, we have Even the Odds. 2-cost event requirement is an energy resource. While paying for this card, you gotta spend at least 1 energy resource. Hero action Thwart, remove 1 times player threat from each side scheme. Deal 1 damage to the villain for each side scheme defeated this way. So I mean, a lot of times I think this is only going to do 1 damage to the villain because you maybe defeat 1 side scheme. In multiplayer, this card becomes a lot better, right? You're playing 4 players, you can remove 4 threat from each side scheme in play. And for 2 costs, I think that's going to be good even if there's only 1 side scheme. If there's multiple side schemes, which there probably is in multiplayer, it becomes even better. So a little bit hard for me to rank. I'm going to put this card just last in the B tier. This is usually where I like to put multiplayer cards here. So in solo, I mean, this card is like, D tier probably. Yeah, probably like even worse than Brains over Brawn. But in multiplayer, I don't think it's bad at all. I think it could possibly be an A tier level card, maybe even S tier if you're playing 4 players, right? Because if you're playing 4 players, you can remove 4 threat from each side scheme in play for 2 costs. Yeah, that is very, very good. And do 1 damage to the villain for each side scheme defeated, which doesn't really matter. There's not going to be that many side schemes that get defeated. Maybe at best, like what, 4 side schemes, so it's going to be 4 damage, which isn't that big a deal in multiplayer. But yeah, I mean, the threat move is crazy in multiplayer. Yeah, so multiplayer, A tier, S tier, solo, C tier, or D tier. Next we have Foiled. It's a 0-cost event. Interrupt when a boost card is turned face up during a scheme activation. Cancel its boost icons. And this is just an interrupt, non-alter ego interrupt, so you can use it in hero form or in alter ego form. I'm actually a huge fan of Foiled, and I think this is actually going to be my first A tier card. I think it's very, very good. It's a 0-cost event, so you can play it at any time. If the villain gets an advance and you're in hero form, you can play this card. This will also give you a safe way to flip down because you know that the villain's going to be scheming with 0 boost icons because you can play the foiled to cancel it. And then, yeah, I mean, pretty good card. Boost cards turn face up. Yeah, the only thing that hurts from it is that you don't cancel the boost effects, right? When the boost cards turn face up, yeah. But most of the time, I think if you're in Alter Ego and the villain is scheming, or most of the time when the villain is scheming, period, the boost effects are a little bit less detrimental. because I find that a lot of times boost effects will cause more damage on your character through attack activations, but in scheme activation you usually just want lower threat numbers, not boost effects, because yeah, whenever you're taking an attack from the villain and you're chump block with an ally, you want to see really high boost icons, because the ally's gonna take all the damage, but whenever the villain's scheming, you usually have to remove that threat anyway. So I think Foiled has a lot of synergy with that. It doesn't really contradict any of that. So I think Foiled is actually a really good card that I like a lot. I love an Iron Man to let him stay in Archer Ego for those first few turns and just cancel those villain boots icons, so he's not scheming for as much. Next we have For Justice, a 2-cost event, an OG event from the core box. Hero action: thwart, remove 3 threat from a scheme, 4 threat instead if you pay for this card using a mental resource. So this is a very good thwart card, kind of your basic curve for what you want to remove threat for non-identity specific type of cards, right? So I mean, this card here is in the B tier. Let me see. This is two resources plus 1, right? 3 effective resources for 4 threat, and this one's gonna be 2 effective resources for 2 threat. So yeah, clear air is gonna remove more threat, but at the same time, I think have them pretty close, because the 4 just is just a bigger chunk, right? Like being able to remove 4 threat is a lot bigger than just 2 threat. There is a requirement that you got to pay a mental resource if you want that extra threat, right? But I mean, yeah, that puts them a little bit closer to each other. And yeah, like if you have 3 copies of Clear Area and you play all of them, you can take 6 threat off a scheme. If you have 3 copies of For Justice and you can play all of them, then that's 12 threat, which is a lot, or yeah, 12 threat, which is a lot more substantial, right? So, but I think Clear Area is still overall better, just being able to have that card draw. So yeah, but this is definitely a very good card as well. And if I have an empty roster spot in my deck, I definitely won't mind putting For Justice in there. Next we have Global Logistics, a 0-cost event. Action: exhaust 1 shield card you control. Look at the top 4 cards of a player deck or encounter deck. Discard any number of those and put the others on top or bottom of that deck in any order. So I'm going to evaluate this card as if we're playing with the shield archetype, and this card is definitely at worst an A tier level card. Definitely better than Foiled. And is it even S tier? I mean, if we're playing shield, I wouldn't say it's an auto include. It's definitely probably an auto include for me, but I don't think it's that level. I may put up to S tier, but I mean, Global Logistics is invaluable. I usually look at the top 4 cards of the encounter deck, and then I can just manipulate any way that I want and discard any number of them, right? So you get super nasty stuff like Advance or Assault. You can put them as a boost card because the boost there is 0. And you get really nice stuff like for Ronin, Fanaticism, for Venom Goblin, his Advanced Glider, right? Just super nasty encounter cards for these super tough villains. You can just discard it, get rid of it, and then you don't have to worry about it, right? And you can constantly do it every single turn. It's so powerful. Global Logistics, I don't know. It's either, the only reason I'm kind of holding it back from putting it in the S tier is because there's been enough times where I play Global Logistics and the top 4 cards, I'm okay with it the way it is. I just put it back to the same order. And I think a lot of times if you're facing easier scenarios, if you play Global Logistics, it's not going to do too much because those encounter cards usually aren't that rough anyways, right? Like getting extra encounter cards and stuff like that don't matter as much in the lower difficulties. So because it's not all across the board, I'm going to put this card in the A tier. But definitely if you're playing like a super duper tough villain like a Ronin, I think that Global Logistics becomes so powerful and probably an S tier level card. So it just matters how difficult the villain that you're playing. If you're getting rid of a nasty encounter card, it's good. If you're not getting rid of any encounter cards or just weak ones, it's not going to be as good. Next we have Great Responsibility, a 0-cost event. Hero interrupt: when any amount of threat will be placed on a scheme, you take it as damage instead. So this card is pretty terrible. I'm not the biggest fan of it because it doesn't have any synergy with Justice, right? Because usually when the villain is scheming, you're in alter ego, right? There's no way to guarantee that the villain is going to scheme while you're in hero form. This card is a lot better, I think, in multiplayer, because when any amount of threat will be placed on a scheme, right? If your partner flips over to alter ego and the villain schemes, you can play the Great Responsibility and take that as damage instead and just not add any threat to the main scheme. So in multiplayer, I think it's pretty decent. But overall and in solo, I'm gonna put this card in the C tier. And I think because of multiplayer, because both Crisis Averted and Great Responsibility is better in multiplayer, I'm gonna put Great Responsibility above it. Both these cards need to be in multiplayer to really maximize their full potential. And Great Responsibility, yeah, I mean, it's going to be so rare that you get that in advance and have the Great Responsibility in your hand to play as Hero Interrupt, because you got to be in hero form. But in that situation, it's going to be very good, right? Because then the advance won't kill you like it normally would. So that would be very powerful. But yeah, definitely a situational card, so I'm going to put it here in the C tier. Next, we have Home Lane Intervention, a zero-cost event action. Exhaust up to 3 shield cards you control and choose a scheme. Remove 2 threat from that scheme for each card exhausted this way. So super powerful with the shield archetype, and I love playing this in Alter Ego because it's not a hero action, right? So you can play this in your Alter Ego, exhaust shield cards, and effectively thwart in your Alter Ego, because it feels like a thwart when you're taking off 6 threat off of a scheme for a zero-cost card. All you have to do is exhaust other shield cards that you have. So if you're playing shield, I mean, this is another A tier card, and I personally like Global Logistics more than Homeland Intervention, but I think Homeland Intervention is going to be good for every single situation, right? Because you always want to remove threat. It's such a cheap, efficient way to remove threat. I'm going to put it above it, and do I think it's S tier? It's an auto include for Justice if you play it. If you're playing the shield archetype, and exhaust up to 3 shield cards you control. Yeah, I mean, even if your hero has a super efficient way to remove threat, like this way, this card just containing threat like crazy. I can't really think of any situation. I think if you're playing Shield Justice, and the thing is, I play Shield Justice where I don't include this card, but I think that this card, it sounds weird. It's that I'm tempted to put it in the auto include, even though the only reason I don't include it is because I don't have enough deck space for it, but this effect is so good, and you can choose, if you don't have the 3 full shield cards, you can just exhaust 1 or 2 and remove 2 or 4 threat for 0 cost. Yeah, I'm going to put this card in the S tier for right now, just because it's probably the best way to remove threat in the entire game, right, through an event. And I like Global Logistics a lot more, but that's my personal bias. But I think Homeland Intervention is actually a little bit stronger. So I'm put this in S tier. I may drop it back down to A tier, depending on how I feel at the end of this, but right now I do think it's an S tier card. Next we have Impede, 2-cost event hero action thwart. Remove 3 threat from the main scheme. If this is the first card you have played this round, return this card to your hand. So pretty decent, right? Even though it's only 2 for 3, which is not the most efficient thing. You usually want to play this card first and you get it back to your hand, which is pretty nice. So it's almost a 1-cost event to do 3 threat, which is very, very good. I don't think it's going to be as good as Clear the Area. And I don't think it's as good as 4 Justice, because being to remove 4, I mean, they both have a conditional effect, right? So they both do 2 for 3 at its worst. This one can go back to your hand. This one does 1 more threat. They're very, very close. I'm not sure. Let's see. The thing is, 3 threat. I'm going to put Impede above, I think. Or, no, I'll put Impede after. Actually, I may drop even more because of removing 3 threat from the main scheme only, right? So you can't take it off of a side scheme, which hurts it a lot, because a lot of times, especially for 3 threat, a lot of side schemes come in with 3 threat, so that's a perfect amount to remove from the side scheme. I think because of that, it loses a lot of versatility for me. And sure, you can play it twice to take a lot of the main scheme, but I want it off that side scheme, especially if it has Crisis or something like that. I'm gonna put this card in the C tier. I'll put it first in the C tier because these I think are more situational, but Impede is only going to be good if you recur it back, because it's the first card you play, and then you want to remove that threat off the main scheme, right? Just 3 threat off the main scheme, which is not a lot, but I mean, it's still a decent amount. But I think because it's only in the main scheme, that limits it a lot and keeps it out of the B tier. Next, we have Lay Down the Law. It's a 1-cost event. Hero response thwart. After you change form, remove 3 threat from a scheme, 4 threat instead if you pay for this card using a mental resource. So it can effectively be a 1 for 4 threat remove, which is very, very good. But it's a hero response, so you have to change form to play this card. So this card I think is going to go in the C tier for me. And I'll put it first in C tier just because its potential is very, very good, right? If you're playing a hero that's multiple forms in hero form, like Ant-Man or Wasp, they can change from tiny to giant form or giant to tiny, and then play this hero response because that's considered changing form. Then it's just 1 for 3 and possibly 1 for 4, which is very, very good. And they can change forms like that every single turn. For a lot of other heroes, the only form you can change into is Alter Ego. And when you change to Alter Ego, you can't play this because it's a hero response. So you only play this from Alter Ego switching over to hero form. And then that's a little bit more limiting because you have to have this event in your hand while you do that switch from Alter Ego to hero form. But definitely 1 for 3 or even 1 for 4 is very, very good. So, but because of that, it's a little bit more situational, so it's going to go first here in the C tier. But very powerful effect. Next, we have Living Tribunal. This is a 2-cost event. Action, shuffle this card into the encounter deck without looking. So when you play this card, you have to pay 2 costs for it, then play it, and then as an action, you can shuffle it into the encounter deck. When reviewed, remove 2 threat from the main scheme and remove this card from the game. This effect cannot be canceled. So this is another card that I'm just not a huge fan of, but I think it's better than these 2 cards right here. So the only advantage of this card is that, so you can only play this card if it's helping you chunk, if you have the villain scenario under control and there's not a lot of pressure, you have to spend 2 resources to play this card, right? So you're not dealing with a lot, you have the luxury to play this card. And then you only get its effect if it's drawn from the encounter deck as an encounter card. If you get it as a boost card, nothing will happen. The biggest bonus to that is that instead of getting your regular encounter card, you don't get it, you get this card instead, which is way better because it doesn't have a bad effect. And then you can remove 2 threat from the main scheme, which is okay. Like, it's not going to be, it's not the best effect because you can't choose when it happens, right? It's not like you can plan around playing this card from the encounter deck. So it's okay. Removing 2 threat is going to be decent, but not really much anything. The biggest effect is that it blocks out an encounter card. But it's so situational because if you get this as a boost card, then you can't trigger the effect. But I do think it's better than these cards here because these cards here, in my opinion, there's just no reason to play them, right? The breaking and entering, like you can have allies store for you in your alter ego if you really need to remove threat in alter ego. And then if you're in hero form, I mean, for justice, impede, clear the area, lay down a law, these are all better options than breaking and entering. So I just don't think breaking and entering, like I think it's just, there's just way better versions of this card. And Brains for Brawn, I think I can't really think of a situation where this card is good either. So even though I don't think Living Tribunal is good, I think it's better than these 2 cards here. Next we have Making an Entrance. Here Interrupt is a 1-cost event, by the way. Here Interrupt, when your hero makes a basic thwart, it gets +2 for that thwart. After that thwart ends, if your hero remove all threat from a scheme that way, heal 2 damage from your hero. So you have to be making a basic thwart, and you pay 1 cost to play this card as a Hero Interrupt, and you get 2 more thwart. But you want to remove all the threat from a scheme to heal a little bit. Not my favorite card because I do feel like Justice has a lot of ways to flip down to Alter Ego, where you can just exhaust to recover, to use your basic recovery. But definitely in the correct situation, this card can be good. Giving you +2 thwart for 1 cost. Similar to Clear Area, right? But Clear Area is better because you can just play this as a separate thwart activation, right? Not a basic thwart activation, but like a separate, thwart. But Making an Entrance forces it to be 1 big thwart. So it has to be whenever you are exhausting to make that basic thwart to use. I think that makes it a little bit more difficult to play. Definitely not as good as Lay Down a Law. I think that Impede is better as well for that same reason. Yeah, but I'll put it here in front of Great Responsibility because these 2 cards I don't think are that good. Next we have Multitasking. 1-cost event, Hero Action Thwart. Remove 2 threat from a scheme. So that's same 1 for 2. If you pair this card using a mental resource, which it's not that difficult to do, remove 2 threat from a different scheme. So this card I think is pretty good. I'm gonna put it in the B tier, and definitely better than Agile Flight and Concussive Blow. I think. Is it? It's hard to say. So I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it in front of For Justice for right now, and I'm not sure if this is a good spot for it. So similar to Clear the Area, at worst, the multitasking is just 1 cost for 2 threat. Then you pay for using a mental resource, you can remove 2 threat from a different scheme. So if you're playing the villain and there's only 1 scheme, like the main scheme, this card's not good at all, right? Just 1 for 2 with no other effect. Makes it just a directly worse version of Clear the Area. But some scenarios, like Venom Goblin, has 3 main schemes. So this card is really, really good for Venom Goblin because you're always going to be removing multiple threat. And then for other scenarios that have a lot of side schemes, right, that's going to be invaluable. You can take 2 off the side scheme and 2 off the main scheme as well. So it just kind of depends. And in multiplayer, I think this card is a lot better as well. So if there's not multiple schemes in play, this card is definitely way worse than like For Justice or all these cards behind it. But a lot of times there are ways to get multiple schemes out, especially with player side schemes. Now you just play a player side scheme, use it to remove that from that player side scheme and then from the main scheme, right? So 1 for 4 is very, very good, very efficient. And yeah, all you got to do is get that 1 for 4. I think this card is very good. And if it's 1 for 2, then it's not very good. Next, we have Mutant Peacekeepers, 1-cost event. Play only if your identity has the X-Men trait. Hero Action Thwart, exhaust your hero and any number of X-Men allies. Remove X threat from among schemes in play. where X is the total threat of those characters. So you can only play this card as X-Men, and you have to exhaust your hero and any number of X-Men allies, and then do like a huge chunk of threat, but you can pick from any amount of schemes in play, which is very, very versatile and pretty useful. But it's one thwart activation from your hero. I think that this is better than the attack equivalent. Exhaust your hero and any number of X-Men allies. But the thing is, all your allies could just thwart themselves. So what's the only thing that's the only benefit of playing this card is that you can choose among schemes in play, right? So for example, if your hero has 3 thwart and then your ally also has 3 thwart, right? That's going to be 6 total threat. And then if you play this card, let's say you have like 2 side schemes that both have like 1 or 2 threat on them each. Well, then you get the full efficiency of that, right? Because you can remove that 1 threat off one side scheme, 2 off the other one, and then the remaining 3 threat off of the main scheme. Versus if you're not playing this card, you can just throw out those 2 side schemes and you have like leftover threat removal. But I think that's a pretty rare situation. I think it's definitely a C tier level card, a very situational card. But if you can maximize its situational uses, I think that it can be very good. Next, we have One Way or Another. Ooh, okay. Zero cost event. Max 1 per round as a hero action, so you only play this card in hero form. Search the encounter deck for a side scheme, review that side scheme, and then draw 3 cards. So One Way or Another. I mean, at worst, it goes in the A tier for me. And let's evaluate to see if I think it's an S tier level card. So one thing, okay, so you're playing this card, it's one effective resource. You get a side scheme out, and you can draw 3 cards. Against the easier villains, their side schemes are not bad at all. You can actually just keep those side schemes in play, and you get a free 3 card draw, which is effectively 2 because you're playing this card, right? But it's a great way to have a blank card to mill down your deck. And then I think the other reason why this card is so good is because a lot of these Justice cards, like Multitasking, has synergy with having multiple schemes in play, right? There's upgrades and supports too that have synergy with side schemes specifically and with having multiple schemes. So the Justice aspect works around having side schemes, and this is a way to draw out that side scheme and help you out with that. So I think just because of that synergy, I mean, I think this is going to go in the S tier for me. And I think, yeah, I mean, Homeland Intervention is kind of your peak level thwarting event, even though it's not even a thwarting event, right? So this will bypass stuff like Patrol as well because it's not considered a thwart activation. But the One Way or Another, I think, has so much synergy with all the Justice cards. Drawing 3, getting a side scheme, right? If it's a difficult scenario, it's not going to be as good, but you might be able to clear a side scheme out anyways on the turn it gets played. Ooh, actually, but now I'm considering about multiplayer, right? Definitely in multiplayer, this card's not going to be as good because the threat threshold is going to be more multiplayer, right? Like if a side scheme comes out with 3 times player threat, in solo is just 3 threat, you can clear right away. In multiplayer, it's going to be like, up to 12 threat if you're playing with 4 players. So should I drop this card because of its multiplayer uses? No, but then you have more players that can play cards that have synergy with the side schemes. I think it's still an S tier level card. I think One Way or Another is not as good in multiplayer, but it's just so good overall. And I think it's almost always going to be useful, especially for decks that want side schemes out. And a lot of cards like to have side schemes out. So yeah, I'm going to put this card in the S tier as the best Justice event right now. Yeah, and it may change my mind, but I think for now, that's going to be the best event. Next, we have Pivotal Moment, 2 cost event, hero action attack. Deal 2 damage to the villain, 5 damage instead if there is no threat on the main scheme. So just a way for a Justice to do some damage. If it's 2 for 2, that is terrible. If you get 2 for 5, it's actually really good, but I don't think it's going to be that necessary to do damage to the villain. I'm going to put it, let me see. I think I'm going to put this card, I'm going to put it behind Make an Entrance just because it says do 2 damage and it has to be to the villain, so you can't use this to defeat a minion to help you control the board, right? It has to be damage at the villain, and usually if you're ready to gun the villain down, I don't know if this card's going to help out that much because I would prefer just keep the threat and ignore it on the main scheme if I have the kill shot to kill the villain, but this will require me to allocate resources to clear off the main scheme to get the full damage out of it. So not the biggest fan of this card, but definitely in the correct situation, it can be useful. Next, we have Predictable Ploy, a 2 cost event. Play only if there is a side scheme in the victory display. So assume that we're playing a deck with a bunch of side schemes, or player side schemes, I mean, because those go in the victory display. Here, interrupt. When a treachery card is reviewed from the encounter deck, cancel its 1 reviewed effects. So this is actually a very, very powerful card. I like that it can cancel the one review effects of a treachery, and it's a great way to give heroes that don't already have that in their kit and encounter card cancel. But 2 cost is super expensive for that, right? All hero identity specific versions of this card is only 1 cost for this type of effect, and it's 2 cost. It only cancels the 1 reviewed part, so not surgeon or anything that's not in the 1 reviewed. And it's pretty useless early game until you have a side scheme individual display. And unless you're playing cable, there's no guarantee that you'll have a side scheme cleared off already by turn 1 or turn 2, right? Cable is the only one that can get a side scheme out with Soldier X ability and then have a way to clear it. So, well, a lot of heroes can have a way to clear it, but not a lot of heroes can play it and then still clear it. So, predictable ploy, I think, is situational. Um, it's nice. You need to have it though whenever a nasty treachery comes out, and the treachery only has a 1 review effect, right? Because if it has surging, then you still take the surge anyways, and it's gonna be not as good. I do really like the encounter card cancel, but I think that because of the cost and everything else, I'll put it right here, just behind Impede and before Mutant Peacekeepers. Next we have Problem Solvers, 4 cost event Alliance, so you can pay for this as a group in multiplayer. Hero action, thwart, exhaust an Avenger character and a Guardian character. Remove X threat from each scheme, where X is equal to the combined thwart of those heroes. So you're exhausting the Guardian, exhausting the Avenger, and then removing X threat from each scheme. So this is actually very powerful because you can do, yeah, I mean, that threat removal is actually very, very good. The more side scheme that you have out, if you have like player side schemes too, you can do so much more threat removal because it's going to take it off the main scheme for sure and then accumulate threat depending on how high the thwart is on those 2 characters. Yeah, I think Problem Solvers, I'm going to put this card, and obviously it's going to be better in multiplayer just because it's so expensive. So usually for my multiplayer cards, I put them in the B tier here because for solo they're not going to be as good. I think even the odds is better just because it's a lot easier to play, and in multiplayer like 4 players, I mean it's still 2 for 4 off each side scheme. Problem Solvers does the main scheme as well. It does have a line so you can pay for it as a group, and assume that we are playing with Avengers and Guardians characters. X threat is probably going to be like minimum 4, I think. 4 from each scheme in play for 4 cost. This one, they're super duper close. It kind of depends on player count, right? Like at a 2-player count, Problem Solvers I think is way better. At 4, even the odds is like capped off. I think it can be argued either way. I think Problem Solvers, it takes off the main as well and the side scheme. I'm put Problem Solvers above even the odds just because it takes off the main scheme as well. So I think that's going to be super valuable no matter what. And even the odds definitely need to have a side scheme in play to do anything. Okay, next we have Psychic Manipulation. 3 cost event, play only if your identity has a psionic trait. So evaluating this card as if we're playing with a psionic character. Interrupt, thwart. So it's not a hero interrupt, you can use it in alter ego. When the villain schemes, this activation removes threat instead of placing it. So this card is super duper cool. I love Professor X's art on here. Super thematic, right? So instead of scheming, they actually remove threat for you, and this actually considered you thwarting because it's interrupt whenever you play it. So if you're confused, this card won't be able to go off. 3 cost is very, very expensive, but it's worth it because being able to, it's not just canceling the thwart activation, it's going to the reverse of that, right? So instead of just blocking out all the threat, you block it, but you also get to remove threat as well. So it's almost the same as canceling 2 thwart activations. So I think it's a very, very powerful card. If you're playing Psionic Justice, I mean, you can play this card when you need to remove threat. Like you can just save it. And even though 3 is so expensive, I think it's definitely worth it. I like it more than foiled. I think global logistics is still better though. But yeah, this is a super duper powerful card if you're playing a Psionic hero. Super thematic as well. And I actually really want to see Professor X as a hero in the game, but I don't know when we will get that. Next we have Running Interference, a 2 cost event. Play only if your identity has the Avengers trait. Hero action, thwart, remove 2 threat from the main scheme, and then remove X additional threat from the main scheme to a max of 3, where X is equal to the villain stage number. So if they're on stage number 3, it's going to be 2 for 5, which is good. If they're on stage number 2, it's 2 for 4, which is okay. And then if it's 2 for 2 or 2 for 3, it's not very good at all. So a little bit situational. I think on expert, it's the same as for Justice, right? Because villain stage number 2. Assume that we're playing this card with an Avengers character. Yeah, I think this is a good spot for it because, yeah, if you flip the villain stage number 3, it's going to do 2 for 5, which is very good. Yeah, I think it's right under for Justice. I think that for Justice is going to be useful all the time, just because it's 2 for 4 if you use that mental resource, which is pretty easy to do. It's very consistent. This could be potentially 2 for 2 or 2 for 3, depending on the villain stage number, right? So if it's like that, it's not good. If it's 2 for 4, same as for Justice. If 2 for 5, then it's way better. Next we have Scare Tactic. 1 cost event, hero action attack, do 3 damage to a confused enemy. So 1 for 3, it's not bad, but you need to confuse the enemy to do that. Justice does have synergy with those confused type of with the confusing like archetype and confusing enemies. This is an attack. 1 damage. I'm gonna put this card. I think it's situational. If you're playing with confuses, I mean, it's very cheap damage, but damage is so low. It's a little bit lackluster to be doing just 1 for 3, which is why I'm gonna put it here. But I think it's not a bad card at all. I think it's just a little bit too situational. I'm gonna put it behind Predictable Ploy because I do like encounter card cancels, but they're definitely a decent card. You just really need to, one, confuse the enemy, and then have the enemy not be like stalwart, right? So you can actually confuse them, and then I guess in a situation where like you need that 3 damage for like whatever reason, that's why it's a little bit situational. So I'm gonna put it in the C tier because 3 damage I think is not gonna be that useful a lot of the times. It could help out clear out a confused minion, but if they're confused, you can just flip down, let them scheme, and just keep them in play for a little bit longer because they're already confused. So yeah, I mean, not my favorite card for sure, but I can definitely see a good use for it. Next we have Stealth Strike, 3 cost event, hero action attack, do 4 damage to an enemy. If that enemy is defeated by this attack, remove 2 threat from a scheme. So Justice doesn't have a lot of ways to do damage, so this is just 3 for 4, which is not terrible. And then you have to defeat that enemy, so you have to either defeat a minion or flip the villain from one stage to another to get the full benefits and remove 2 threat from a scheme. So if it's 3 for 4 damage and 2 threat removal, I mean, it's not bad. It's situational. I don't think it's as good as any of these cards right here. I'm gonna put this card. I mean, it's a nice way to ping off like mid-sized minions, I think. So I'm gonna put this card right here, right? 3 for 4, and then you remove 2 threat from a scheme. It could be useful. It's just that if you can only get the 3 for 4, it's not very efficient at all. But still, just a useful way to add in damage for Justice. So I don't hate this card, but I think it could definitely be more efficient. Next we have Swift Retribution, 1 cost event, hero action attack. The villain schemes, do 4 damage to the villain. So I mean, this card I don't like as much as the other variants of it for the different aspects, right? Because I mean, the villain, you're letting the villain scheme to do 4 damage to it. If you know that they cannot scheme out, and you have the kill shot, it can be useful. But I think that's a very, very rare situation to have that. And you don't want to do like 4 damage is not worth having the villain scheme and having them go crazy with some crazy like added more threat. You can't even use on a minion, right? It has to be 4 damage to the villain only. So I think it's a little bit limiting. I'll put this card last in C tier just because I can't really think of too many situations where I want this card. Other than for the only situation is whenever I'm ready for the big burst and I have the threat managed to where I know I can let him scheme, which I think is a pretty low chance of that happening, especially if the villain is putting a lot of pressure on you. Next we have Team Investigation. 2 times player is a cost. So in solo it's 2 costs, 2 players is 4 cost, in 3 players it's 6, and in 4 players it's actually 8 cost here. But Alliance means you can pay for this card's cost as a group, which is nice. Hero action, remove 3 times player threat from a side scheme. Okay, so this card is not terrible. It really scales with multiplayer, right? So in solo, it's 2 for 3. In 4 players, it's 8 costs to do 12 threat, which still is not the best thing because it still scales back down to 2 for 3 either way. But what's really nice is the alliancing, right? I think the alliancing is what helps it out a lot. But even then, I don't think it's as good as the other multiplayer cards, like Problem Solver or even the odds. So I'm gonna put this card in the C tier, and I'm gonna put it last here because I am evaluating it for solo and multiplayer. So in solo, it's D. It's like not usable at all, right? 2 cost for 3 threat removal is the same as the breaking and entering, right? And then this is a hero action, so you gotta use this in hero form. One thing that's nice is that it's not a thwart activation, right? So if you're confused, you can still play this card, and this will bypass patrol as well. But it's only from a side scheme too, so that limits it a lot as well, right? The only thing that this card is good in is in multiplayer, and even then, it's not going to be B tier level, right? I think it's still not the best card in multiplayer, but it is nice because other people can help you pay for this card if they have a bunch of extra resources, right? Everyone can help join in, add to that, and accumulate that cost that you need and those resources, right? So it can be a very cheap card because one player just might have like that turn 5 extra resource and they don't have anything else to play with it, right? So it can be good taking off like a huge chunk of like 12 threat from a side scheme and just clearing it off, but still a very situation card. So this card goes in the C tier for me. Next, we have Think Fast, one cost event, play only if your identity has the Guardian trait. So we're going to evaluate this card as a word Guardian character. Hero action, take 1 damage, confuse a villain. So very, very good card. I'm going to put this card in the A tier. Do I like it? It's 1 damage to confuse a villain. It's so valuable. I'm going to put this card above foiled. Obviously, if you're playing a villain that has Stalwart, this card is useless. But I think that confuse is going to be very valuable a lot of the times, and especially if you're playing Guardian Justice, this is a great card to build around to allow you to flip, right? 1 cost, so cheap, take a damage, super low damage, and you just get it confused off. I think it's very, very good. Yeah, but you can only play this in hero form because it's a hero action, but very solid card all around. But I still like these cards a little bit more just because they work for Stalwart and Steady villains as well. Next, we have Turn the Tide, 0 cost event, response attack. After your hero thwarts and removes all threat from a scheme, do 3 damage to an enemy. So one thing to note about this card is that it's when your hero thwarts, right? It doesn't have to be a basic thwart, so you don't have to exhaust to thwart to play Turn the Tide. You can play Clear the Area, remove 2 threat from a scheme, which is considered your hero thwarting, and then you can play Turn the Tide right after that, right? So, but it's only going to be if you remove all the threat from the scheme and stand for Clear Area, right? So you can get double their effects if you, or both their effects at once if you can remove that final threat from the scheme. Turn the Tide, not my favorite card. I don't like the situational use of it that you need to remove all of the threat from a scheme. Because I think a lot of times if there's a lot of pressure, it's hard to do that. But doing 3 damage is not bad. It is an attack, right? It has the the attack keyword there. So if you are stunned, this would just remove the stun. So you have to thwart to play it. Do 3 damage to an enemy. You can hit off a minion, which is pretty nice. I'm gonna put it right here. I think the confuse from the concussive blow is a little more useful. And yeah, I think it's better than agile flight though, or being able to remove threat from among schemes. Actually, let me see. I think I need to reevaluate these cards here now that I put problem solvers and even the odds in here. So problem solvers is agile flight. Yeah, I think this is an okay spot for it, just because these cards right here, I think, are not going to be as good as Agile Flight in solo, but definitely better than in multiplayer. So I think it's okay to have them behind Agile Flight there. But Turn Tide, I think, is definitely better. A decent way to do damage, just not my favorite way because of that limiting factor that you had to remove all the threat from a scheme to trigger it. Next, we have Upside the Head. It's a 1 cost event. Hero response after your hero makes a basic attack and damages an enemy. So you got to make a basic attack where you exhaust your hero and then do damage. You can confuse that enemy. If that enemy is already confused, stun instead. So this card is very, very good because it has a thing where if it's already confused, you can still get a status off. And if the villain can be confused, it can be stunned as well. It's a great way to block off, to get 2 status cards on the same villain, right, if they're already confused. Super duper cheap. All you gotta do is make a basic attack at the enemy as its cost. I like this card a lot. I'm gonna put this in A tier. Is it better than foil? Yeah, I would say it's better than foil. I don't think it's as good as Think Fast, just because this you can play even if you're exhausted. For the Upside the Head, you have to be readied up, right, to actually make that basic attack and damage that enemy, right? And usually you want to be the villain, so if there's a minion with guard and you can't make a basic attack at the villain, then you can't play Upside the Head. So it is a little bit limiting, but being able to get that confused off for 1 cost, I think is invaluable, or stun out if they're already confused, so that is invaluable as well. So yeah, very, very good card. Next we have Yaw and Row. It's a 1 cost event. Play only if your identity has the aerial trait. As a hero response thwart, after your hero thwarts, remove 3 threat from a scheme. So another one of those responses where you have to thwart first. What's nice is that it doesn't have to be a basic thwart, right? So for the Upside the Head, you have to make a basic attack. So for this one right here, for Yaw and Row, you can play any thwart, right? So you can play a thwart card like Clear Area, which counts as your hero thwarting, and then you can just that counts as your hero thwarting, and then you can remove 3 threat from the scheme. So 1 for 3 is very good. We're going to evaluate this card as if we're playing with the aerial character. So 1 for 3, and then you just got to thwart, and you could just do that basic thwart as well, and then it's just extra thwart, and you can remove 3 threat from any scheme. I think that's pretty efficient. 1 for 3, it's going to go around here. I think multitasking is better. I think it's not that hard to do if you're playing Justice, because you probably want to be make thwarting a lot anyway. So I think Yaw and Row has a lot of synergy with that, and you can play it when you're exhausted, right? If you play Clear Area and then play Yaw and Row right afterwards. So I think if you're playing Aerial, this is definitely a card that I don't mind putting in the deck. Just a solid one for 3-threat removal, as long as you thwart right before you play this card. Just compounding, adding thwart, but I think that's always useful. And then lastly, our last Justice event is the Zone of Silence, a 1-cost event. Play only if your identity has a Mystic trait, so we're going to value this card as if we're playing with a Mystic character. Hero action thwart, choose a scheme and discard up to 4 cards from the top of your deck. Remove 1 threat from that scheme for each card discarded this way. So this card is very, very good, just like all the other Mystic cards that are events. So it's 1 cost, super duper cheap, and you can remove 4 threat from any scheme, right? You can pick the main scheme, you can pick a side scheme, and the only bad sides that you have to mill top 4 cards of your deck. But if you have cards in your deck that revolve around milling your deck, right? If you have like synergy with where you want to mill your deck, then this card is even better, right? Because then it gives you 2 good effects. But even at its worst, if you don't care about milling, this card is still good just being a 1 for 4. Yeah, 1 for 4. I mean, I like that you can move it from one scheme. I think it's definitely, at lowest, it's a B tier card. And then 1 for 4, do I have that card in the A tier? Yeah, I mean, that's really solid. Just 1 cost for 4 threat move. I think it's an A tier level card. And I'm actually going to put it right here. I like it more than Think Fast and Upside the Head because these cards are contingent on confusing, right? So if the villain has Stalwart, these cards are useless. But for the Zone of Silence here, this card's always going to be good. It's just a regular thwart activation, right? Or a thwart action, I mean. So just 1 cost to remove 4 thwart from any scheme. It can help you clear off a side scheme. And you don't have to discard all 4 cards, right? Discard up to 4. So you can just discard 3 if you want to remove 3. 2 if you want to remove 2. It's very versatile in that way. Yeah, it can target the main scheme or side scheme. Just probably like the strongest thwart activation here. Homeland Intervention, I think it's still better than that. And this is like speaking volumes because Zone of Silence is very good. But Homeland Intervention, I mean, you need those shield cards in play, but 0 cost to do potentially 6 threat removal. That just shows how good this card is. Yeah, and I think that, yeah, I like Psychic Manipulation better than Zone of Silence just because, I mean, it's canceling basically 2 villain activations, right? Because you're canceling activation and you can thwart like a bunch, right? So I think that this is very good. And usually the villain, you can have them scheme for a lot. You can play this card when you know they're scheming for like a whole bunch. So very, very powerful card. I do like it more than the Zone of Silence. And then reevaluating these S tier and A tier cards right here. Yeah, I really do like one way or another. I do think it's an S tier level card, even in multiplayer, right? Because you can still get that synergy off of having a side scheme in play with all the other cards that work off of side schemes. The other players in your team can help you clear out that side scheme, and you can play this out of turn, right? So if you're the last player, you can play one way or another during someone else's turn, right? Because it's a hero action that you can do out of turn, and they can help you remove that threat before it gets back down to your turn to where you guys all contribute to removing that. But only you get the card draw, so it's still definitely not as good as it is in solo, but I think it's still decent for you in multiplayer, and I think in solo it's very, very powerful. Like, yeah, I'm getting that +3 cards and a secondary effect of like having a side scheme for all the synergy from Justice with side schemes. I think one way or another is definitely the best Justice event in the game for me currently. All right, so there we have it. This is my entire Justice event tier list. Let me know what you guys think. If there's anything that you guys agreed or disagree with, let me know how you guys feel about one way or another as my best Justice event in the game. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.